Dream can be quite overrated in many ways and only applies to certain people, such as the rich, the white, and most importantly, the men. But as we learn in our literature and history classes, we know there is only one such corruption with people becoming too powerful. After seeing this, I wonder what a woman would have to do to reach such power. What type of system do we need to become leaders, CEOs, managers, or just acceptable to societal standards? They have, of course, changed throughout time, but we never were told the technicalities of us. Allow me to tell you about the historical context to lead me here. The furthest I can trace this back would be to 1932. On May 3rd, 1932, my great-grandmother, Joan Gibson, was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She was an orphan after losing her mother to the flu epidemic and was taken in by a family of 8, the parents and 6 of their daughters. She would tell me how amazed she was with the kindness of people. The family was living during the Great Depression, and the father was working 50 hours plus a week as a bus driver, making around 30 cents an hour, possibly less, to support everyone. The mother, of course, didn't work as the Depression pushed women out of their jobs. Joan was a faithful Catholic woman and received outstanding grades in primary school. Today, when women are 17, they are looking at universities to pursue their future careers. To a man named Francis Gibbons. She didn't know it at the time, but she would be married to him for 40 years and raised 18 children together until his sudden death in 1989. How did they support a family so big with nothing coming from nothing? My great-grandfather had just been honorably discharged from the Navy and married my great-grandmother at 17 with a position lined up to join the workforce at the airlines. Joan was not at work. We are Catholic, so she gave birth from as early as she could start until she could no longer have any more kids. The workforce was far beyond her, as the 1950s grew strong housewife stereotypes. When men returned from war, women left their jobs after proving they were capable of doing the work and expected to meet the housewife tropes. However, my grandmother would never let an ideology take over what she was capable of. She had attended nursing school with her daughter, Kathy, while her youngest son was still a baby. She would attend class with her son because my great-grandfather would be at work. Her nursing career was her only job until she retired, and even today, at 94 years old, I ask her questions all the time about diseases and healing. She can always tell what type of sickness someone has. But one of the most valuable things she taught was that some of the worst diseases come from power, and healing come from being educated. Named Trish, who was the daughter of a nurse as well. Tom was still in high school, and Trish had been busy with her position working for the government. Fast forward to a very short amount of time later, Tom would be leaving his high school graduation early to go and marry Patricia Sullivan. This scenario is quite urgent because their first child would be here by October that year. Unfortunately for Trish, her time in the workforce had ended, and she carried on the nuclear family tradition with the heterosexual couple and the 2 children, the first daughter being my mother and the second child being my uncle. When I come to think of it, my grandmother never really contested the idea of a stay-at-home mom, which is fascinating to me given the hard-working woman she was. But as my great-grandmother said, some of the worst diseases that are heavily contagious are created by control and power. The United States was facing extreme sexism problems as women were not allowed to access contraceptives, were not able to complete jury duty, and at this time, women were recently granted access to open their own credit cards without their husband's permission. This is a step for gender equality, but all of a sudden, women were expected to understand finances after generations of men handling it. It was no easy adjustment to make. These are amazing, and we need these workers, but why is there a feminine tone to a job? It is so strange because the 1973 Equal Employment Opportunity Commission banned segregated job listings. 5 years later, the 1978 Pregnancy Act made it illegal to discriminate against workers if they were pregnant. The workers at this time were expected to wear dresses or skirts, and wearing pants would result in termination. Trish had been avoiding the chaos of the workforce as the American system was improving but not accommodating to previous circumstances. It is important for us to not wash away that in history. Looking at my mother, Rachel, she had been working since she was 15 years old. At this time, my grandmother had 5 children and lived in a house outside Philadelphia with her second husband, and my mother was the hardest working woman there. She also continued the legacy of being academically talented and graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA. While she was still in college studying finance and accounting, attempting to pursue a career in business, she found out she was pregnant with her first daughter during her college career. College full-time, work full-time, and parenting full-time. It took the generations of the Gibbons' woman to figure out it was all possible, it just wasn't normal. Entering the workplace in the early 2000s as a woman was supposed to be an exciting time. However, we know there is always something viral about the American justice system towards women. The early 2000s led to an increase of rape and domestic violence cases in America. Educational rights were far behind as most men were carrying college degrees, and the topic of reproductive rights received the most media. Looking at certain statistics, women and women of color are still highly discriminated against in the workforce, despite those acts passed by Congress decades ago that my grandparents fought to see. I am Rachel's first daughter and lived the best childhood and early adulthood thanks to her determination and hard work. I graduated high school and went right to a university to study. Rachel's youngest daughter, Lorian, named after one of my aunts, is the hope to see in the future. I want my baby sister's path to look much different from our previous generations, with unlimited opportunity and safety and security. How can we make sure all of these equality rules apply to the future?
I'd like to thank Grandma, Grandma, and my mom for all the hard work and taking care of my family. And when I grow up, I want to be a teacher. And I hope the world looks nice for the women all over the world. And here's the part for the moms. Thank you so dearly much for adding people to the world, and in most families, taking care of your kids/kid and doing your job. Thank you so much. Bye.